Hey everybody, welcome to another Duffman Now 2 video. I haven't posted on YouTube in quite some time, but I decided to make a new video today with Classic and everything that's going on. Um, I had gotten into the beta somewhat, the stress test anyway, and I was played this one up until about level 5. I don't know if this video particularly is going to have some background sound. I think I had some problems recording some of the footage that I did. But I just wanted to give my 2 cents, as it were, amongst the thousands of other people that have given their 2 cents. Classic, the thought of Classic coming back actually gave me a reason to want to resubscribe to WoW. And because I was hoping to get into the beta, I had played, I've pretty much day one player. I started, I believe my very first day was, I think, 2004. I don't remember. I do remember the very, very first patch that got installed. The very first patch that I installed was the patch for Maraudon. And I was playing probably about a month or two before that. So I believe it was about a month after launch that I started playing. I did find out about it early on, before it actually launched. But trying to actually get the subscription cards for it was impossible. They were sold out everywhere. The game wasn't sold out. I was able to get the game, but I was not able to get the subscription cards. And I played it obsessively, probably right up until the very beginning, very end of Cataclysm, very end of Wrath of the Lich King, and very beginning of Cataclysm. I really burnt out in Wrath of the Lich King. The end with the Trial of the Crusader, I was playing like crazy. I had multiple characters going at the same time. And I really burnt out. And somewhere along the line, I believe it was towards the end of the Burning Crusade, I had decided there was a movement going around. This would have been probably 2007, thereabouts. There was a movement going about these pre-BC guilds that were doing content prior to the release of the Burning Crusade. So they were basically level capping at 60 with the experience eliminator. And the premise was to basically get to level 60 and only use pre-BC content and only play that and only stick to that. We did allow people to use talents up to a certain point and stuff like that. I believe this was around the time when there was a 41st talent point, and I was invested in that. I enjoyed that more than I enjoyed the current content. And once Cataclysm released as well, I really didn't like Cataclysm at all. I felt it really messed up the world, made the level experience a lot different. And I pretty much stopped playing right after Cataclysm. I mean, I bought my collector's edition of Cataclysm. I was hyped to get into it. I was hyped to move on from the Wrath of the Lich King. And I think I made it a month or 2 months into Cataclysm. And then I just sort of gave up on the current content and sort of stuck with the pre-BC guild. And I stayed with that for quite a long time. Actually, I believe that my guild fell apart right around the time that Onyxia was moved to a current, like a retail raid. Once that was gone, that basically stopped the entire pre-BC guild movement. Probably around 2018, beginning of 2018 last year, with Legion being in full swing at that point. I decided to hop back in, and I really liked Legion. Legion was, I think, given the state of the game, I believe that Legion was probably the best expansion that came out. Now, I know a lot of people are going to disagree with that, and that's fine. But the reason why I think Legion was one of the best expansions to come out, at least when I got involved, I didn't get involved in the beginning, so I avoided a lot of the artifact grinding and stuff like that. But one of the reasons I think that it was one of the better expansions was because it gave us they removed the old talent system that we used to have, and they gave us an artifact weapon that sort of gave us that talent tree back, and we started moving back to an older time, sort of very similar to Classic. It really reminded me of Classic. I guess pre-BC, Classic, Vanilla, whatever it's called now. And I really enjoyed it. I really enjoyed the content. Yeah, the questing was still kind of crummy. But I really enjoyed the grind to get my artifact weapon built up for multiple characters, for multiple specs. I thought it was one of the best things that they had introduced. And you felt the sense of progression again, at least I did, which a lot of people think that the Burning Crusade, like a lot of people say the Burning Crusade was the best expansion. I slightly disagree with that because if you look at it from a perspective of gear and grinding for gear and leveling up and feeling a sense of progression and stuff, as you're leveling into 60 and then you're moving on to the Burning Crusade, none of the gear that you have matters, right? None of it mattered once you started getting the Burning Crusade. So you had no reason to go through the steps that people had gone through prior. You had no reason to go through any of the end game content for Classic. And you're basically better off once you hit, I believe it was 57 or 58, whatever level you were able to get into the Outlands and start questing there, your gear basically got better almost instantaneously. So there was no point in doing any of that content. So it really felt like we invalidated a lot of that end game. There was, and for me, I had gotten up to AQ40 and we never put down Cthulhu. So it's got to be... That was as far as I made it at the end of Classic. So, there was no reason to do any of that stuff. There was no reason to go back and grind for gear and stuff like that. And I felt that when Legion came out, it actually gave you that motivation to go and grind and get your weapons up and get talents and everything else. You felt a really good sense of progression. And I think once there was a lot of people that were going into Burning Crusade at the time, when Burning Crusade came out, that there was, people had put a lot of time and effort into their characters, and I put a lot of time into my character as well, multiple characters, and all of that was for nothing. Burning Crusade was great when it came out because you're like, oh, new content, and I can do this, and I can feel just as powerful as those guys did. But when I look back on it, this is hindsight. Looking back at it, I don't think Burning Crusade was a good expansion for that reason, because it made all of the gear that you had prior just useless, and I think that going forward with each expansion after that, that's precisely what they were doing. And Legion now, despite the fact that it was tied to an artifact, you're basically your class weapon or whatever, your spec weapon, you still felt that sense of progression, and you were doing things to actually level your character up, get more skills, get more talents. Every part of the artifact weapon, everything that you unlocked felt good and powerful. So that I'd have to say that Legion was probably the best expansion with hindsight. Going into Burning Crusade and going into the Wrath of the Lich King, Wrath of the Lich King I thought was my favorite because at the time I thought Wrath of the Lich King was my favorite. Simply because the story was there, you were interacting with Arthas and stuff like that. There was a lot going on. You felt involved in the story, which I thought was great for the time. Like I said, with that hindsight, I really think Legion has to be considered for one of the better ones, if not the best, just because of what it actually tried to do. Questing became meaningless. And we have the sharding and stuff, which also made the worlds meaningless. But I think if you take what we have right now with Classic and you were to introduce, at 60, if you were to introduce some type of skill tree similar to the artifact weapons, maybe not tie them to the artifact weapons, but basically have basically another skill tree. That was one of the most exciting things when you went from Classic into Burning Crusade into Wrath of the Lich King. You always got new talents. You always got some way to figure out what's the best spec, even if it's, people have always said it was just the illusion of choice when you were putting your talent points in. And that's fine, but I'd rather have that illusion of choice than no choice whatsoever. And you could always come up with really wacky builds that you just enjoyed playing. I used to do it all the time. At the end of Legion, the moment that I heard that the artifact weapons were going away and we were losing all of those talents and everything, I was done. I canceled my subscription immediately. I had already pre-purchased Battle for Azeroth. I had already pre-purchased it at that point. Didn't actually play it until this past few weeks when Classic Beta was announced, when I resubscribed and stuff like that. But anyways, the ultimate point of this video was just to say that if they decide to move forward with classic content after Naxx, which I can't wait for. I'm absolutely excited to get to Naxx. If they decide to move beyond with content, I hope they don't go back to the Burning Crusade. I feel that they will, because they know how successful Burning Crusade was. They know how successful Wrath of the Lich King was. So for me, there's no reason to believe that they will not do that. There is a small possibility that they do go beyond Naxx and keep the level at 60. Wait. And realistically, if you think about it, that's all they ever needed to do. They only ever needed to keep content at 60 and just give you other ways to level your character. So I think that's where I believe they should go. They should go into that and give us other things to level. Again, I don't think they should give us an artifact. Instead of saying vertically scaling your character every single time, you have to have new talent points. Oh, you have to be level 70. You have to be level 80. Why not have some set of vertical, have horizontal progression, have something where, you can have other content. You can even take something like Karazhan, retool it for level 60, design new loot. Now, again, this is why I think that they won't go this way, because this requires a lot more effort, I think, than what they're willing to put into it. I think Classic is going to be very popular. I think it's going to have a lifespan. But as for post Naxx content, I really think they're just going to move to the Burning Crusade because it's going to be the easiest and probably the cheapest for them to do so. However, again, like I've said, if they decide to go that route and do post Naxx content, they could do something like retool Karazhan, introduce new loot tables, create gear for specific classes that are missing out. So, I think that like having like a 6-piece bonus for like a paladin, for example, where if you collect 2 of those pieces, say this is tier 4, or you can call it whatever you want. It doesn't even need to have a tier specification or anything to it. But you could have something like that has a 2-piece bonus that gives the paladin's attacks additional threat or additional. They gain the ability to taunt and stuff like that. And they don't really, with Classic, I don't really think they need to worry about balance, because I think the game was fundamentally unbalanced. And I think that's what made it fun. There's all kinds of different things that they can do. Will it eventually get boring? Maybe, but as long as there's something fresh to do, there's no reason that they can't retool these other dungeons. There's no reason they can't do, like I said, do Karazhan and make it for level 60, make it a 60 raid. There's no reason. Introduce new loot. Even keep the same loot that's there and just reduce the level cap on it. There's all kinds of different things that you can do. But the main thing is to not invalidate the tier system, right? Everybody feels that nice sense of progression when you go from 0 to 1, 2, 3 and Naxx content and all that stuff. And that stuff should always matter, like if you want to keep, because it would be nice to have multiple tiers where you can basically pick a spec and have that gear, and you can have 2 pieces of one thing that say give you a taunt, 2 pieces of another that give you something else, extra armor or something, extra health, whatever it is. There's all kinds of different ways that they can do their end game. So I think that's what they should look at. And that's really what all I really wanted to say with this video. And Blizzard, if you're listening, I would love a beta key, but I'm just going to throw that little plug in there. but that's really all I wanted to say for this video. I'm really looking forward to Classic, and I cannot wait for it to come out. I think it's going to absorb a lot of my life at that time when it does come out. So anyways, guys, if you enjoyed the video, just give it a like, give it a thumbs up down there, leave a comment if you want to, and you know, if you don't like it, give it a thumbs down. But anyways, guys, I'll see you in the next video. Have a good one.